You're listening to the Sixers Beat with your host, Derek Bodner, right here on LibertyBallers.com and LibertyBroadcast.co.
Welcome, everybody. This is Derek Bodner. I'm joined once again by Rich Hofmann on the latest Sixers Beat. It is now official. The team sent out a press release confirming the trade. Boston did as well, and then Bryan Colangelo had his press conference about it. Real quick, I guess, before we kind of get into it, the details on the pick protection, because they are a little bit confusing, or at least a little bit in-depth. First of all, there is so they get the 2017 number 3 pick. That much is known. That has always been a given. They also get one additional draft pick, and that if it's a number 2 through number 5 pick, and that's inclusive, so 2, 3, 4, 5, if the Lakers pick next year ends up in 2, 3, 4, 5, they get that 2018 Lakers pick. If it's not, if it ends up number 1, which is protection put in for the Sixers, or if it ends up as 6+, which is protection for the Celtics, then they get a 2019 first-round pick, which is one of either two of the Kings pick that is unprotected. Well, the Kings pick in 2019 or the Sixers pick in 2019. The Celtics will get the better of those two picks as long as the better of those two picks are not the number 1 pick. If the better of those two picks is number 1, then they will get the lesser of those two picks. So it's a little bit confusing, but basically, easiest way I can simplify it, if the Lakers pick next year is 2 through 5, they get that. If it's not, they'll get the better of the Kings pick or the Sixers pick in 2019 as long as it's not the number 1 pick. So a lot of protections in there. I am impressed that the Sixers got, basically they made a trade where they got the number 1 pick for the number 3 pick plus a future pick, and they removed any and all possibility that what they give up could end up being the number 1 pick in the draft, which is good. I like how I try to simplify, and doesn't seem simplified at all.
You out of breath yet? There's a few details on that one. I was impressed that he was able to get the which I am now dubbing the Doncic clause, yes, and the Bagley clause in reference to the potential top picks in 2018 and 19. Yeah, I was impressed.
And we made this joke earlier, but people are going to say, well, why isn't the Michael Porter Jr. clause? Because Doncic is a cooler sounding name.
Way better. Yeah. I don't even know how to say it. Is it Doncic? Is that actually how you say it?
It sounds right to me.
Okay. So, yeah, and Colangelo talked about it. He didn't really say too much, but you could tell, like, the negotiations between those two teams, I bet you they were pretty intense. Those are two pretty sharp front offices. Boston obviously has made a million really great trades that have set them up in the position they've been in. And yeah, the Sixers to get just that top end protection.
Yep.
If in the next 2 years they land the top pick, they're going to make it, which is good. That is most of the fear that you were going to make when trading those picks. If it gets down in the 3 or 4 range, well, all right, well, Boston will get that. And, I mean, we'll have to see how those classes shake out. I do think it's pretty big guy heavy next year in the 3 to 4 range, which I think might be of a little less use to the Sixers, who have really good front court depth. But regardless of how that goes, the big thing is you didn't want to see Boston get the number 1 pick next year. And they won't. And for the Sixers to get that and move up for Markelle Fultz I was very impressed by the deal that they were able to make.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you were going to say about the protections next year, the only other thing you could have really hoped for was top 2 protection, because like you said, it gets real big man heavy after that. But if you would have taken our temperature at the beginning of this whole process, after the lottery happened, I think we all, like, this would have been the very least you would even, like, if you would have suggested less than this, you would have thrown that rumor out there as being, unrealistic. Like, if I would have said, what's it going to take to move up from 3 to 1, this is kind of like the bare minimum I would have thought even had a chance.
I wrote a post on my site asking, what would you give up for number 1? And I mean, again, when you're negotiating against yourself, like, you're probably going to come up with something stupid. But what I said was, whatever the Celtics wanted as far as one of those 2 picks, obviously number 3 would be the first one, move back 2 spots. I said I would give them either the Lakers or the Kings pick, just take it, or whatever. And I said I'd throw Dario Saric in too. And this is less than that. So, for them to negotiate that, it says a couple things. One, it says Danny Ainge was clearly not in love with Markelle Fultz. And that's what this whole trade boils down to. It's a difference in scouting opinion. And the Sixers, Danny Ainge is clearly not on the side of the consensus, because I think most people would agree with the Sixers that Markelle Fultz is not only the best player in this draft, but he's the safest guy to be the top pick. You have no idea how the draft's going to turn out, but he is the safest bet to be the best player in the draft. So for them to give up less than that to keep Dario Saric and put protections on that pick, I mean, it's... Look, I know Sam Hinkie put the Sixers in a good spot, but Bryan Colangelo did a heck of a job with this pick here.
Yeah, no, I mean, you talk about Ainge having a difference of opinion, and it was funny because there was talk around the NBA, talk that I had heard, that they were content and fine selecting Markelle Fultz number 1. That's clearly not. That was bravado. I kind of mentioned that in one of my mailbags in the morning, and clearly that turned out not to be the case. I'll take that lump. But it's causing a lot of people, you have the viewpoint where, okay, well, Danny thinks that the player they can select at 3 is an equivalent prospect as Markelle Fultz, so it's a win-win because they got extra assets in return. That's only true if Danny's right. He's certainly setting himself up where he could be very wrong, and I certainly disagree with him. I think Markelle Fultz is a tier above. It will be fun to watch play out because, man, you got a guy who I thought was head and shoulders above everybody else. You're not going to give up a number 1 overall pick in the process. You're only giving up one more additional future first-round pick. It really does seem to be about the best-case scenario. There was a time on Saturday night where a report was wrong or two, and it came out that the Sixers were trading the Lakers pick and a protected Kings pick, and then quickly it was found out that was not the case, and that would have made the trade a little harder to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, when that came out,
I'm not even sure I'm saying I wouldn't have done it, but it would have been a much tougher.
I had mixed feelings when that came out from a very credible source. But it was just confused, and instead of both of the picks, it was one or the other, plus the protection on it. Saturday night was probably the best Philly sports night on Twitter. I think this was tweeted out somewhere. This isn't my original thought, but probably since the Cliff Lee night. Although, I mean, we're going back 6 years ago.
Twitter was in its infancy back then.
Yeah. It was great. And I mean, the 20 minutes where everybody thought that it was both picks, and I think a lot of people were talking themselves into it. I'd do it anyway. And some other people, it kind of made it worth it when it finally came out that it was only 1 pick instead of 2. And kudos to you for getting the scoop Bodner over here, getting the information that it was protected 2 to 5. It is, from like a team building standpoint, it is a fascinating deal. Yeah. Like, this is going to be one that not only we in Philadelphia, but I think the entire NBA is going to be talking about for forever. It is, I mean, the details on it are amazing. All of the pluses and minuses you can weigh each way. It's great. And I'm thrilled that the Sixers were a part of it because it makes the team I'm covering more interesting for sure. Yeah,
and it's the type of deal where you couldn't have done this 2 years ago. You couldn't, and a pick that you got that eventually became unprotected in a trade, you couldn't then put protections on it not too long ago. So it worked out very well in the Sixers' favor that they changed that rule and made this possible, because it would have stung. I mean, look, we can talk about the odds of the Lakers ending up with the number 1 overall pick next year, or the Kings 2 years down the road. But that chance, however small, 5%, 8%, whatever we can agree upon, that's still there, and that would have stung. It's nice to get that protection in there, and kudos, like you said, giving Colangelo and his team credit. I mean, look, Hinkie, you can't not look at the Hinkie aspect of this. This would have been a number 5 pick in the draft without the Lakers pick, without the future Kings pick. Those moves certainly did set them up, but I mean, Colangelo and his team had so many different avenues they could have gone down this summer. And they picked the very best one to use those assets on them. I'm very happy about what they got accomplished.
And, I mean, the fear for Colangelo was that he was going to go all veteran on us. And he was going to try and max out, guys who were 28 years old and declining and might not have star potential.
I like the clarification from Stein. I think it was today or last night that they will now not pursue Kyle Lowry in free agency, which I almost feel like didn't need to be said because, I mean, they have Markelle Fultz. Why would they? But it did kind of ease my concern a little bit. Yep.
And we'll get into Markelle Fultz a little later, but I know that both you and I have him in a tier by himself as far as this draft goes, and just the offensive talent that guy has is pretty special. He shows some flashes. And look, it's not like a lot of people are celebrating this trade as in like the Sixers are already parading down Broad Street or MLK Boulevard or wherever we are in Camden right now. But it's exciting for sure. And their core is one of the most high upside cores for a young team. You do not see this happen all that much in the NBA.
Let me ask you this, because I've gotten into some arguments about a tweet I made on Twitter the other day. If you took the Cavs and the Sixers, so you took Towns, Levine, Wiggins.
You mean the Wolves?
Yeah. What did I say, Cavs?
Yeah.
Cavs have a pretty good core too. They're a little different in their life cycle. But if you took Towns, Levine, and Wiggins, Embiid, Simmons, and Fultz, I kind of have I have Fultz and Simmons ahead of Levine and Wiggins, which I think is pretty incredible. Pretty incredible.
So the way I would tier them up, probably, I would have Towns first by himself because he doesn't have the injury risk.
The health is big.
Yeah. Embiid is second by himself. And then my next tier would be only Fultz and Simmons.
No, I mean it's like I understand why people would take the Wolves side of this because Towns is so much more of you have so much more confidence in that going forward. But I mean even that Towns Embiid debate I think could be really fascinating down the line if Embiid stays healthy. Knock on wood. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. I mean they really have a lot to build upon and they fit so seamlessly together that it would be hard to screw this up. It really would. I mean when you now look at I guess we can pivot off to free agency. But when you now look at what they need and what they should pursue, it's such a clearer focus now than it was before. You know, before you're arguing about how much you want to take the ball out of Ben Simmons' hand, about how much you want to invest in a point guard and some of the older options that are out there. You need one spot, man. You look at this team, and they have 4 out of 5 starting spots, pretty much filled. Where really what you just need age, experience, and health. So you're looking for a very specific person. If you can't get it, I'm kind of okay with pushing that out to 2018 and beyond.
Well, and so is Colangelo, according to his comments today. Again, he wasn't very specific about anything he said, but he seemed more than willing if the right free agent, and we're basically talking about a shooting guard who can actually shoot, or a small forward, a wing of some form there. If they can't get the right guy, they're more than willing to push it back to 2018. And obviously, I think, they have a couple of off seasons before this core becomes expensive because obviously Embiid's going to cost starting next off season. But if they're able to keep any veteran contracts to a year or two less before Simmons hits free agency, they have a cycle here where they could potentially fill over the next couple of years with just a veteran shooter, somebody like JJ Redick, perhaps, if they're able to get him for a couple of years, or Kyle Korver or somebody like that, just a stopgap veteran. And then a couple years before Simmons hits free agency, there's a scenario where they're able to land a big star, and they'll have the cap space to do so.
Yeah, and I mean, now that you're looking at it, let's play the clip real quick about Colangelo and maybe waiting until 2017. Here it is.
But we're going to continue to look to build with that core and make right decisions that don't put us in a situation that jeopardize a nice strategic path towards sustainable success. So jumping out in free agency is still something that will be contemplated really with those two ideas in mind, whether or not we go out with multi-year commitments or short-term commitments that maintain flexibility. I think ideally we would like to not only have max flexibility now, but maintain max flexibility next year when this group has a chance to grow together a little bit more and be more, perhaps, more ready to add a high-level free agent. That's not to say we're not going to explore the marketplace this year, but it sure feels right that this group, this young core that we are assembling, has a chance to grow together.
So I think what I kind of take away from this is, first of all, you never really trust anyone, and maybe they still go out there and make that big splash. But I said this the other day, and I still think the priority this summer is not the summer because you can't do it, is Robert Covington, giving him that renegotiation so that his next 4 years are relatively cheap. You give him $20 million now, and then he's down at the $10, $11, $12 million per year range. That would be great to get him under contract because you're looking at then 2018 and this team and where they are in their rookie scale contracts. You're looking at a roster sheet, a cap sheet that pretty much has Joel Embiid paid a ton, And look, unless his leg falls off, he has to be paid.
He's worth it.
You can't let him go. And then you have Robert Covington being paid not a ton. I mean, if you're talking $12 million, that's 50% more than the mid-level. That's not a ton anymore, even though it still sounds like it. And that's it. Then you got guys on the rookie scale. You can figure out what you have on the roster and then really pursue 2018, which is a great year of free agency with a little more knowledge.
Yeah, it was nice to see Rocco when the team tweeted out. Of course, Colangelo wouldn't specifically say.
Who would have thought that they're sitting there with the best 3 players from the 2014, 2016, 2017 drafts, and Robert Covington, the undrafted free agent from Tennessee State, is included in that core.
I was happy to see him. I was happy for him, and well deserved. Just a really good complimentary piece. And yeah, I mean, he fits in great with. I mean, God, we talked so much about fit over the past couple of weeks. Just, these guys are awkward fits here, and does this guy's shooting preclude him from playing with this roster? Man, they got a 1, they got a 4, and they got a 5. All you got to do is they got 2 4s that are actually pretty good. Don't want to discount Dario in this. They just got to fill in the other spots, and they got a lot of options in how they're gonna do that. Whether it's a short-term player and a long-term player, or maybe just punting until next season, it's great. And I'm sure this is the season. I'll make a prediction right now. This is the season where maybe not casual NBA fans, but more casual NBA fans start to realize how good Robert Covington is.
Yeah. I feel like we've said that once or twice before, but he's finally getting some of that
Third time's a charm. Yeah.
For his defense. I mean, I agree with you. I think he's going to be, and the fact that he might be playing on a decent team while doing that and getting big minutes is going to help. I think one of the kind of side benefits of this is you get a 19-year-old kid, so it's by definition a long-term move. But you also now have the addition of Simmons, the addition of Fultz, Embiid playing hopefully longer than he did last year, or more often than he did last year. And there's always been kind of that nagging fear that Colangelo might, try to improve the perception of the club and make it seem like they're serious about winning. They can get that win improvement now and not be forced to do anything. You can kind of get that perception boost and scratch that itch that Colangelo might have without really making any long-term decisions of consequence, which is kind of great.
If he's going to be wrong, he's going to be wrong for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that was our fear, that it would be the opposite. And yeah, just like you said, I mean, 19 years old, 20, I don't know if Ben turned 21 yet, but 21, just turned 21, and then a 23-year-old. And I mean, this is your young core, and they're going to ride with that moving forward. I mean, how many times over the past couple years have we talked about, God, if they just get this right, people are going to be just all in Philadelphia. They haven't even gotten it right officially yet. I mean, it's just the idea of getting it right. And God, talk radio, all you can hear. Markelle Fultz.
It also helps that the only other team playing right now is just a complete train wreck, too.
That helps.
I don't know how you could talk about the Phillies right now. That's coming from someone who covered the last 3 years of Sixers basketball.
That certainly helps. But God, I mean, just think back to that workout the other night. What a circus that was. I mean, I haven't seen that many. I don't think I've seen half as many media members
at this
facility.
The only time you see that kind of crowd is when they were about to set an infamous record. Like an 18-game losing streak. That's when we see that kind of crowd. It was nice to see it for a good reason this time.
And there were a few of those along the way.
Yeah.
For sure.
Too many.
That workout was, I mean, just the anticipation of Fultz. I guess we couldn't track the plane because he was just driving up I-95, but it was really funny waiting out. I know you were a little late the other day, but you made it for the workout. But when we were sitting out in front of the training facility, a couple of Sixers fans were over by the fence on the other side, and they were screaming. They were happy to see Markelle there. Yeah, and it was just, I mean, his workout, and it was perfectly on brand. He shot like he was like Philip Seymour Hoffman, and along came Polly, just tossing up bricks, and which of course didn't matter because the Sixers knew they were going to draft him. They didn't care, and it was just it was a circus, and a circus in a good way because. The Sixers, I just feel like for so much we were talking about uncertain things, right? Like this Lakers pick could become this guy, or, they have all these assets. They have cap space they can use. Now we know for sure, like, they're going to roll with this core, with Fultz, Simmons, and Embiid. And That's a good thing. The fact that we actually can talk about tangible basketball players now, it's certainly a change.
It's amazing what the last 12 months have done, isn't it? You got Embiid playing. You got Simmons drafted. You got the number 1 pick in the draft now 2 years in a row. One through lottery ball combinations, one through trades. It is amazing how it's materialized not from the thought of players and draft picks and hope into actual guys that you can see standing here in Camden. It's a pretty remarkable turnaround. It really is.
Yeah. Life comes at you fast.
So we have spent precious little time talking about the actual play. And I don't mean in his podcast, but I mean in the past month, because nobody has thought
we just
he would
thought
be
the
available.
Celtics are going to take him.
Yeah. Who is Markelle Fultz? What is he as a basketball player, and what makes him such a great fit?
He is, I don't want to, I'll go here. He is close to the prototypical lead guard you would want in the modern NBA. He is about 6'4", 6'5". He has a 6'10" wingspan. He's not quite the explosive athlete in terms of like vertical leap as maybe say like Dennis Smith, but he can dunk on people in traffic if he gets ahead of steam. And I think the main thing that he can do, which is why you take him first, this guy can get his own shot. He is a fantastic ball handler. He is excellent quickness. And it's sort of like, we were pretty high on, let's say, like D'Angelo Russell a few years ago because of his shot making and passing ability. So Markelle Fultz has that ability, but D'Angelo Russell couldn't get his shot off in the NBA. Markelle Fultz is going to be able to get his shot in the NBA. He's quick. Some of those spin moves he has. Like, he's the guy who, when you watch his highlights, he just makes wow plays. And he's the type of guy who is just, his potential is absolutely tantalizing. He has good vision. And just like Ben Simmons, he played in a really crappy college basketball team. And partially due to the fact that the similarities with Simmons are interesting. Played in a crappy college basketball team and didn't play a whole lot of defense, which, again, doesn't really color my... he has the ability to play good defense.
Yeah, he definitely does. His ability... And some people brought up the D'Angelo Russell comparison because their numbers are somewhat similar. But his ability to maintain a live ball dribble in traffic, it's absolutely absurd. It's an elite skill that D'Angelo Russell was weak at. His body control and touch at the rim and the way he can just contort his body, he's going to be fun to watch. The defense, it is interesting. You go back and you watch some of the U18s and the other teams where he was a lot less was put on his shoulders offensively. I think he can get after it a little bit defensively. I certainly think he can get to the point where if Brett Brown gets through to him, he can be, not a liability. He can be a contributor. He can force turnovers, and he'll have some versatility there. You just kind of have to wash away the stink of 1 year at Washington and hope he doesn't have any long-term bad habits. But I'm optimistic he will, like I said, at least not be a liability.
He mentioned that defense the other night as a reason he would enjoy playing in Philly, which I thought was funny just looking at his tape because, like, let's be real. Like, he didn't get in the stance once just
He's
like
I can block shots. It's like, that's great. Buddy.
That's great. But
how about you don't let your guy buy you the first time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Brett Brown has showed over the past couple of years, if he showed one thing, is that he can construct a good defense. And now he actually has, players with the tools to be like a really elite defense. Yeah, as far as Fultz goes, everything I said about his defense is true. But again, he's also 6'5" with a 6'10" wingspan, which, like, when you're somebody like D'Angelo Russell, when you're somebody especially like Isaiah Thomas, that kind of limits your potential defensively.
A little bit.
Yeah. He's going to be a guy who you think will be able to switch on the wings a little bit and won't get killed. And he'll at least be average, which is good news because guess what? He's going to be above average offensively.
Yeah. He might end up being a top 20 offensive player in the league, and I don't think that's a crazy projection at all. In fact, I'd be a little bit surprised if he wasn't. They're one piece away in terms of a shooting guard from really being able to switch 1 through 4. And not that you're going to want to switch Fultz onto a 4 all that often, but with Fultz at, like you said, 6'4", 6'5", 6'10" wingspan. Covington, we already saw him defend 4 spots last year. Simmons and his size and quickness and reflexes, and again, Brown's going to have to get him to buy in. And then even Justin Anderson off the bench, and TLC too. Like, you're one piece away from having a real good wing rotation.
Even Henderson, if he's still on the team, like they got some guys who can switch for sure.
Yeah, and in all honesty, Henderson's a guy I might have a little more interest in now that now that this has come into focus a little bit more, I don't know if I want him back, but I'd consider it more. It's gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be fun.
They switched a lot the Neurons year. When he was a rookie,
MCW and Roten year too.
Yep, and Luke Mbah was the Cameroonian who was playing for the team at that point. They have a different one now who presents a different skill set for sure. But I think that they're going to have the ability to do that. And yeah, I mean, God, Fultz, it'll be interesting. There'll be so many debates of who's the point guard. Is it Fultz? Is it Simmons? And I'm not sure that matters. But what do you think about his shot? He shot 40% at Washington. I will say this. The thing that blew me away at Washington, his ability to make contested jumpers is pretty crazy. That was an impressive 40%.
It was not an easy 40%. That's for damn sure. I think the only real criticism I have is that I think he could get it off a little bit quicker off the catch. That's such a small criticism, though. Like, that's so easily correctable, and you work on his footwork a little bit. His ability to, it goes back to body control, but his ability to pull up off the dribble, have balance, be able to make that contested shot, like you say, it's really good. And maybe he's going to struggle for a year or two at NBA 3-point range. Most people do. Most rookies do.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to get there, though.
Yeah.
It might take 2 or 3 years, but I think he's going to get there.
And I would suspect him not to be, maybe average to a little below average as a 3-point shooter. And in general, I do want people to realize, we are not expecting Fultz and Simmons next year to be as good as Embiid was last year. I think that's extremely rare, but they're going to be fun, and they're going to show some flashes for sure. Because, it's just like young players don't win. And it's funny. I'm just thinking back. I remember I was talking to you. We were just bullshitting before a game in the Sixers locker room. And there was really nothing going on. Maybe we were waiting to interview Embiid or something like that. And I mentioned to you, I said, what do you think about this Fultz guy? And you were like, he's pretty damn good, huh? And I was like, yeah. And we sort of knew back in, it didn't take long for me to realize this is the best guy in this draft. Yeah. And for the Sixers to get him, it's great. It certainly makes the next couple of days a little more stress-free for I'm sure a lot of people in that front office and just the Sixers fan base as a whole.
Tell you what, it completely changed everything and anything I was working on, everything I had planned. I had podcast guests lined up that I had to cancel on or reschedule. The topics are going to be completely changed. I threw out a podcast that I already recorded. I have half-written scouting reports on Jackson and Tatum and Isaac and Monk that I'm just going to delete now. It's a very good problem to have. Don't get me wrong. But it is certainly just for this to happen. Honestly, for it to happen before the draft, I'm a little bit surprised. I really thought this was the kind of thing that would go right to draft night, but it really just shows that Danny Ainge wasn't, it could be Ball, it could be Jackson. Seems like Danny Ainge is okay with it.
He's either okay with one of the two, or he's really confident that the guy who he wants is going to be there at 3. Yeah, we said over when we sort of did the emergency podcast on Friday that we hoped it would happen over the weekend, but I was surprised. Yeah, I thought they were bringing in Fultz so the Sixers could say, okay, we'll take him and this deal will be agreed to. But yeah, like you said, I thought the Celtics were going to have to wait until the Lakers pick second to see exactly who would be available there if their guy.
Which almost makes you wonder if they want this kind of certainty so they have the next 3 days to work on something else. And you're always going to be sitting there with Danny Ainge wondering, whether or not there is something else up his sleeve. It'll be fun to watch how that unfolds. I will say, there's some people saying, if Danny Ainge flips it for this or that, that doesn't matter. When you're factoring in whether or not the Sixers, who cares whether the Sixers won a trade? But when you're factoring whether or not it was a good trade for the Sixers, whatever they could end up with Gordon Hayward and Jimmy Butler. This is still a very good, and a trade the Sixers should have made. This was a very good deal and a very good outcome.
Oh, it's irrelevant what Boston did. The Sixers, the idea of trading within your division is just so antiquated. It just doesn't matter. And because divisions don't matter, and you're going to have to beat everybody at some point anyway. For them to lock up their core, it's just a massive deal to get the talent level. The thing I feel like we bring up Fultz all the time now because he's new. Fair. And we also bring up Simmons because of the fit. Joel Embiid is still in Philadelphia.
He's still really fucking good, too.
And he still has the chance to be I think we throw around the term best player on a title team too easily. He has that type. He has that type of talent. And now he's got 2 dudes who easily have all-star potential. So
what's nice about Fultz Embiid has top 5, top 10 player in the whole fucking league kind of potential, but there's always going to be that little bit of uncertainty with his health. And then Simmons has not quite the same talent level, but he has a real elite talent level, but there's some question whether or not he'll reach it because of this shot, because of his uniqueness, because of maybe his defensive indifference at times. Fultz, and I hate saying this because we said this about Simmons where it was nice to get that one kind of star that you can rely on, and he went out and he broke his goddamn foot. So I hate saying this, and I apologize if Markelle Fultz got injured. But man, it just seems, we talked about this with the debate between, if a lot of people ask, and have asked, whether or not if Simmons and Fultz were in the same draft, who would go number 1? And for the longest time, everybody,
now you got both.
everybody wanted you to say Simmons because they wanted like confirmation that the guy that they had was it. But I think it would have been a lot more split among front offices because I think a lot of people look at Fultz and they say that's a very easy projection to make. Yet Simmons has a lot of talent. He certainly has more ways he can impact the game. But man, Fultz's offensive game should just translate like a T. So it's nice to kind of you have that really high upside, unique guy in Simmons who, if things work out, could be incredible, just very unique and impactful. And then you have a guy like Fultz who, I mean, talk about tailor-made for the NBA. He should be able to come in and run a pick and roll to death right from the jump.
Oh my God. I mean, he had very poor spacing at Washington. Some of the splits on pick and rolls he had were just, It was sublime. It was just special type stuff, and that's why he's the number 1 pick. And as an added bonus, he seemed pretty excited to be playing in Philadelphia.
He did.
Larry's cheesesteak shout out, too. It seems like I had no idea he was so familiar with the area, but
most prospects, they might shout out at Pats or Geno's that their agent told them about. You don't get many Larry shout outs.
No. And for him, it's obviously a good deal. He'll get to play pretty close to home. His family will be able to come up and get to see him play. And I don't really have much else, man. What are we missing anything?
Oh, I'm sure we're missing something, but it's these podcasts are still. We tried to make this one a little more focused than the last one we did on Friday when we were pretty much just reacting to the euphoria. There's still a little bit of that mixed in there too. It's hard to kind of get over the fact that they traded up to number 1 and we'll get the best player in the draft yet again. It's a wonderful spot to be in, and for all the fans that really stuck through this rebuild and are now celebrating on Twitter, maybe a little too much, but having a little fun on Twitter, I certainly feel good for them.
And speaking of the fans, I mean, God, we're beating PTI and all these different places.
Certainly, thank you for listening to us. Again, I'll never understand why. And I was on the Ricky the other day, and we had jumped up to 13th, and they were 20th in sports podcasts on iTunes, and the Ricky got in the top 10. So hopefully we'll be able to get in there. We still have a lot in store for you this week coming up. But yeah, thank everyone for listening. It's been pretty incredible to see your podcast that high in those rankings, because those are not easy guys to compete against.
Those are, and just in general too, just as far as the whole fan base is concerned, 2 Sixers podcasts in the top 20 on iTunes, like something with that narrow of a focus to be that high. It's pretty cool.
And again, their ranking algorithms are kind of magic. I have no idea how they actually work, but
we're certainly not the 15th most listened to to podcast, but we'll take it anyway.
Yes, we will. We'll screenshot the fuck out of it and post it on Twitter and be happy about it. But anything really else? I know it sounds like there might be one more workout tomorrow. I don't know how much anybody's going to care about the prospects coming in. You're certainly not going to work anybody else out that would be a top 5 pick, unless they got something up their sleeve, which who knows? But
something
I
up
doubt
their
it.
collar.
Still got. I mean, it was funny. Speaking of the collar, his complete reluctance to say Markelle Fultz. He kept saying the player will draft at number 1 or the number 1 pick, and kind of substituting it for a name. And he kind of did that last year with Ben Simmons too. But like, you brought the guy in here on Saturday and worked him out. You drove him up here from Maryland to have him come into your gym, and you let the media in to watch it. Seemed a little unnecessary, but that is the NBA in 2017.
It wasn't quite Howie Roseman last year saying, we're going to pick second, and we're going to take the quarterback the Rams don't take. Right. Which obviously he couldn't offer the specificity that Colangelo was allowed. But the good news is, Brian, nobody's going to jump over you. There's no money in the bank where you can cash in the number 1 pick. It's just, and it's cool. I mean, just that we know that the Sixers again are going to have the top talent in the draft for barring health, of course, the 3rd time in 4 years. That's pretty massive. Get
another elite shooter. This should be really fun to watch. All right. I think that's probably it. We'll let you go. Thank you guys again for for listening. We'll have another guest or two on over the course of the week to talk about Fultz, give his perspective on why he is or is not the best player in the draft, and how he fits with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. But thank you again, Rich. Thanks for jumping on, coming live to you from Camden. We're probably going to try to do this a little bit more frequently, but it's been great.
It's been great. Leave those iTunes ratings.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Sixers Beat right here on LibertyBallers.com and LibertyBroadcast.co.
I attract clientele. My mic check is life or death, breathing a sniper's breath. I exhale the yellow smoke of Buddha through righteous steps, deep like the shining, sparkle like a